name is John Didi, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local political media analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am talking with candidate for Congress Mark Conway, trying to win a seat in the 7th Congressional District to replace Kwasi Mfume. Welcome back.
Good to be back, John. Good to see
My
you.
first question is, how's the campaign going?
It's going well. It is a lot of work. It's a bigger district than I'm used to, so we're trying to cover a lot of ground. But the feedback has been really good. Folks are really supportive and eager to have an option here. We are in a pretty difficult moment as a country, and I think people are looking for real solutions. They're looking for folks who are not only willing to fight, but also have a plan on how to do so. And the reception has been great so far.
You were talking that it was a big district. I took out a map this morning, and there was one thing that jumped out immediately. Your district also covers District 46, which Bill Ferguson represents, that
Yeah.
Bobby Le Pen is running against him. Are you getting a different vibe when you're going to that district as far as campaigning with what's going on there? Are people more receptive, less receptive? How is that going?
It's interesting. The huge swaths of 46 are not familiar with our current congressman because the maps were updated in 2022. And so, this is the first time they're meeting a congressional candidate from the 7th district. This is the first time they're having a conversation about some of the topics that we've been focused on. And so the reception has been great there. I see a lot of the dynamics. I see a lot of the sign wars between the Senate president and his challenger. And it'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out. But in my race, I think it's been relatively easy to connect to folks and to make the case.
What is the number one issue people are talking to you about when you're going door to door or when you're in various meetings? What are they talking about that they really say, when you get elected, you got to do this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think all the conversations sort of start out with how crazy this time is right now. Um, I think a lot of people are really frustrated to see the lack of action at the federal level, to see the complete chaos coming out of the White House. I feel like every 3 or so days, something we've never heard of before happens. Whether it's abducting, kidnapping the leader of another country, or starting a war for no good reason, or there's never a dull day apparently on the national level. And so I think it all kind of starts with that. I think a lot of fear, frustration, and disappointment at what's been going on the federal level. And then you get to affordability. I think across the board, folks are feeling the pressure, and they're looking for real ways to address the very significant economic challenges that we're dealing with right now. So it's a tough time, I think, for our country. And I think despite some of the progress that we've made as a city in Baltimore, I think we're still a part of this country, and we've got to figure out how we can protect folks given all that's going on.
You talked about Baltimore making some progress, and it really has, especially on the crime front. One thing that's come up recently is the situation regarding BG&E and the new conduct agreement that basically they're trying to deal with that and all the stuff going on with BG&E and the rate situation going on. Would you like to speak to that a little bit and what you feel the situation is right now regarding BG&E and the city?
Yeah, so for your viewers that maybe haven't learned too much about this issue, the city of Baltimore owns the conduit. These are the pipes underground that house cables and stuff like that. And the city, by ballot measure, decided that we would not give the ability to the city to sell the conduit. And so this is a public-owned asset. BGE had an intention to purchase that asset. And in 2023, despite the decision of the people, a significant vote not to sell the conduit was passed. We still, in a backhanded way, transferred control of the conduit to BGE. They, for the last, 3 years have been making decisions on where to spend capital dollars. And this is a problem, if only because when it comes to ensuring safety, ensuring reliability, addressing the issues that are very real downtown, we haven't seen the issues addressed. And so this was I think, in some ways, a big problem with the administration because the administration rushed this deal through against the pushback of the council and against the pushback of our comptroller. I think it was a bad deal for the city. Long story short, we called into question in my committee some of the problems of that agreement, the inability for the city to prioritize safety and determining what locations would get highest priority. The ability for the city to ensure reliability for all those businesses downtown that have been shut down for a very long time or had inconsistent power. And so, or inconsistent internet because these conduit systems also control internet access. So, we brought these issues up, and I really encouraged the administration, noting that we had an opportunity in roughly 30 days to either continue in the agreement or to revisit the entire agreement and throw it out the window. I urge the administration to really look at what was in the best interest of the city and really think about what this should look like, not necessarily what we signed, and make it clear to the people whether or not it was our intention to continue in this BGE agreement. Just the day later, the administration made it clear that they were not going to continue in the agreement, which I think is a huge, huge win, I think, for the city and for the people. I think it was a raw deal for the city. And I don't think it really helped from an energy affordability perspective because what was it caused energy bills to increase for folks in the region, to very much simplify it. So now we're in a position where we have to renegotiate our conduit deal with BGE. And in that, we want to make sure that there is, we can shed some light on what's being considered, that there's some transparency in that process. I think a big step in the right direction. I'm happy that the administration made the decision to cancel the continuation of the agreement. Now, I think we want to make sure that there is transparency and accountability in whatever agreement we come to with BGE on their continued use of our conduit.
In the past, you did take campaign money from BG&E, but you made a lot of headlines last year when you basically said when it came to campaign money, return the sender, address unknown.
Yeah.
Why did you make that decision to basically say when it came to BG&E and its other subsidiaries, I don't want your money? Because in politics,
Yeah.
money's the mother's milk of politics.
It is, and I will tell you, it was not an easy decision, but increasingly when I began to see the influence that BGE with its contributions, the influence that BGE has on the political decisions that I was seeing both in City Hall and in Annapolis, I knew that it was not a good look. And that even on top of that, some of the solutions that I knew we should be exploring were not going to be in the best interests of BGE. And so in order to do those things, you got to separate yourself from BGE. I think also in a world where we literally had residents come to the city council to roll in, as an elderly woman who rolled in with her oxygen tank and told us that she could not afford to fill her oxygen tank because her BGE bill was so high. We had folks who were saying they had to choose between paying their rent and their BGE bill or paying for their medication and their BGE bill. These are life and death decisions for many folks. No one should have to make life decisions just to keep the lights on or to keep their home warm or cool during the summer. And in a world where, um, you know, our public utility that is a monopoly is making space to make contributions to my reelection campaign, but folks can't afford, to put food on the table or to fill their oxygen tank. That is an absurdity that I want no part of. And so I knew then that it wasn't right to continue to take money, and even more, I had to return the money in order to think soberly about what solutions should look like to make sure that we never end up in this situation again. Now we have a solution, And that solution, I believe, is a public power authority that can generate power locally. BG is not going to like that solution because it limits their control. But if we really want to solve the problems that the people of Baltimore are dealing with, or even the people of Maryland are dealing with, we need to disassociate ourselves sometimes from these corporate entities that are looking to make a dollar, if only to make sure that we can make decisions in the best interest of the people.
Question I want to ask is related to a piece of legislation Congressman Olszewski recently introduced called the ROBE Act that would
Mhm.
limit terms of Supreme Court justices to 18 years. And my first question about that is for or against it. The second thing is this. A bigger problem, though, may be the situation of people staying too long. At times, Congress represents a senior citizen's home. Would you support legislation? It would take a constitutional amendment to also maybe limit the terms of members of the House and Senate.
Yeah, so with regards to the rollback, I think at our current situation, we know there's a balance in the courts. We talk about it all the time, but we have to pretend like our courts don't have are not influenced by politics. And with decisions of the past couple of Congresses to limit the ability for Democrats to appoint to Congress, we may not have a balanced court for a very long time, maybe not even for the rest of my life. And I think that's a big challenge. I think it's a big concern. And so I applaud Congressman Olszewski, Johnny O, for putting forward that bill. I think it's a great idea. I think we have to find some way to make sense of um, how far right decisions have gone. And it I think we have to resolve that issue. And if this is one way to do it, I'm fully supportive of it. With regard to term limits or restriction, I think we need to figure out something out here. I'm not sure what the answer is necessarily, but and this is something I've gone back and forth on, and particularly because we're considering a similar measure right now on the council, and I don't want to throw my hat in too soon because I think this is a pretty complicated issue. Um, but it is a problem that folks are sitting in these seats and not necessarily doing the work of the people at the level that's needed, given where we are as a country in this moment. I think we need something different in a lot of these seats. I think sometimes the business as usual actually hurts our party and our democracy. So it's certainly something I'll be on the lookout for and figuring out how we can appropriately make sure that one, people have the ability um, to choose their leadership, but then also that we don't end up with a stale Congress.
One of the things I had just thought about related to this is you got a member of Congress from New Jersey, Thomas Kane, who's been MIA. No one really knows where he is or what the problem is. At the same time, you have an issue where a lot of these folks, it does represent a senior citizen's home sometime. Would you support legislation to maybe say, at a certain age, we got to bring a new generation of ideas in because it seems like maybe on the health issue, if someone has to go into the hospital, there has to be some notification. Also, let people know what's going on. Because right now, that's kind of scary in a way. If you have a member of Congress in your own district and it's like you don't know anything about what's going on.
Yeah, I think I want to be careful not to I don't want to focus so much on age as I do on delivering for the people. And I think, if you've got an elected official that's getting it done, like actually getting it done, I can't say that I would necessarily force him out because of age. As I sort of chew on this issue, I may get there, but I do think we want to make sure that we have folks who are on top of the issues, are in line with the people, that are not stuck in their ways, that are showing up, making the votes, pulling together policy, and thinking on the cutting edge. That we need new people, we need new ideas, and I wouldn't necessarily. I don't know if I'm willing yet to go so far to say that it is age that will be the differentiator between me, but I do think Congress has gotten stale. And I think we have to find a way to reinvigorate Congress and show once again that we can have representatives working on behalf of the people.
One of the big issues that has been recently talked about is Speaker Johnson has talked about next Congress, we got to look at three things: Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And he wasn't talking about, hey, we got to figure out how way to increase payments. He was talking about how to cut those things.
Yes.
What would you do, or what are your thoughts about dealing with these issues as far as the financial long-term obligations? And do you think something should be changed in the system, or what can be done to kind of make them a lot more solvent than they currently are?
Yeah, I think for Social Security, I think we have to raise the cap. So after you make a certain amount, you pay the max you can into Social Security, and what that means is folks who are very wealthy and extremely wealthy don't pay any more into their Social Security than people who are middle class, and I think that's a problem. I think that will help make that fund more solvent. Um, I think with regard to healthcare, I think we are the richest country in the world by far. We're the richest country in the world, but we're the last developed country to have universal health care. The conversation between Medicare and Medicaid important today, but I hope not important in the future because we found a way to implement Medicare for all. And I think the efficiencies that we find in a system where everyone is insured abound, if only because right now we're paying for all the people who are not insured. When someone who isn't insured gets sick, they go to a hospital and they pay emergency room bills, but they don't pay them. We pay them because our premiums go up. And so we have significant inefficiencies in the current system that we're in that would be significantly resolved by universal health care, ensuring that every single American has health care. So I think, now I think we consistently find a way to fund things that maybe people don't necessarily want to fund. We're funding a war that I don't think anybody wants to be in. We'll fund weapons, we'll fund ICE, we'll fund things that people don't want to see funded. We can find the money. The money can be found. The question is, do we have the will, and do we have the intention to actually carry it out? So I would really like to see universal health care be a top priority for any Democrat running for office going forward. And I'd like to see leadership make it a priority should we have the opportunity to flip Congress.
One of the things that's been talked about recently is over the last 3 months, we've been dealing with high gasoline prices because of this Iran war. The president has said at least 40 times, I think they have, that it's almost over. Just a couple more days,
Sure.
that's all, 95%, et cetera.
Yeah,
It's
I got a
almost over.
bridge to
And
sell you.
most people think it's not almost over.
Yeah.
What do you think should be done to kind of get this thing dealt with? Because I look at social media on the conservative side, they've got the attitude almost close to nuke them till they glow and shoot them in the dark. A lot of other people are saying, look, we just got to get out of this thing. But there's a concern about the Strait of Hormuz. What do
Yeah.
you think should be done as far as trying to get out of this mess the president kind of put himself into?
Yeah, I think we need to stop funding a frivolous war. I don't know why we got into this. I still can't put my finger on why our president thought it was a good idea to start a war with Iran. It doesn't make sense. And as a wise man once said, there's no bad time to go in the right direction. If we are moving in the wrong direction today, we can stop doing that. We don't have to continue this war. And so I think we need to work to end this war as quickly as possible. Every day that we continue in this war, we're spending roughly $1 billion a day, and who knows what we are losing in damaged infrastructure. So I think this war is a complete waste of time. It's a complete waste of money. It is destroying the world's economy because of the Strait of Hormuz and the access to all the goods that then come through it. And with the destruction of oil infrastructure in the area, it's making everything that much more complicated to no one's gain. So, to be very succinct, I think we should stop the war.
Right now, a lot of people are concerned about gas prices, but also the price of beef and a variety of other things, some due to tariffs and a variety of other things that have happened. What can Congress do? What can you do in many ways to try to reassure people or to do something to kind of get some of these prices down? Because right now, a lot of people are concerned the family barbecue 4th of July might be one burger minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a lot of challenges in our economy. I think a lot of it stem from the pressures of the war. I think a lot of it also stems from the pressure on the American dollar. I think this is one of the probably most important tools that America has that no other country has, and it is the American dollar. And I think we've seen the dollar take a hit globally because of some of the decisions of the current administration. And what that means is now everything that we purchase that comes from other countries is going to be more expensive. We're seeing further efforts to that undermine the dollar by our president leaning into cryptocurrencies. That just undermines the dollar. So I think we need to be very, very thoughtful about the broader economic impacts. When you're talking about beef, when you're talking about eggs, when you're talking about gas, when you're talking about cars, when you're talking about houses and lumber and all these things, they span so many different industries that the one thing that is constant across all of them is that they are purchased and sold with dollars. And whatever we can do to stabilize and protect the American dollar, both here and abroad, will go a long way towards making sure that our economy is just more stable. And I think stability feeds into so many different things. But I think right now our country is unstable. And I think our leadership is unstable. And I think our Congress has done nothing thus far. And this is why it is so important that we are focused on issues that people actually care about and we're solving people's actual problems because that's the only way that we're going to make change as a party and in Congress. So when I'm thinking about what it takes to make these changes, first, we have to flip Congress. This is of the highest priority. That's where everything starts. 2026, we must flip Congress and we must come forward with um, a policy agenda that actually addresses people's problems, especially the affordability issues.
Why is it you are one of the very few people in city council and Baltimore city government, Maryland state government, and all who's willing to defend the office of inspector general in the city of Baltimore? Because it seems like everyone's got the knife and the gun out and is trying to destroy the office because it's not just the actions of trying to destroy it citywide. These actions that people are proposing could destroy inspector general's offices statewide and many strong Democratic jurisdictions.
Yeah, that is a really good question, John. I do not have a sense for why we would not want to see inspector generals have direct access to files and the ability to do their job without the influence of politicians. That I can't put my finger on why that is the case. The only thing that I could maybe say is that folks have something to hide. But I just you know it's hard for us to ask people to trust government with their tax dollars, to raise taxes, to ask for more, to try to put funding toward things that we want to see when the very office, the watchdog office that is supposed to make sure that those dollars are well spent and that they're not stolen or wasted, um, that very office is sidelined or caged in the way that the Baltimore City Inspector General is being sidelined. But the decision to consider the Inspector General as outside of the city and therefore, requiring them to follow MPIA is a ridiculous. That's a ridiculous idea to me. It's a ridiculous idea to most people when you start to think about what the job of the inspector general is. You should not treat the inspector general as you would treat a reporter. That doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, the way that Baltimore City has interpreted the law, and now every other county in Maryland has begun to treat the law, is that every inspector general should be treated as a reporter. That doesn't make sense.
One thing I've talked to some people about, including Harry Dunn, is the issue of when they get to Congress, one of the things they want to do right away is to impeach President Trump. And years ago, I remember I had a student who said, I want to impeach Bush. And I said, do you want Dick Cheney as vice president? And all of a sudden he said, oh, never mind. And how do you feel about an action of impeachment against the president? Because the problem is, I think the House would probably pass it if it was a Democratic
Mhm.
Congress, but the Senate's going to make this trial fast and go away, and everyone's going to move on. Where do you stand on possibly taking actions towards impeachment?
Absolutely support it. If only because the impeachment here is less political than literally we know that this president has made more money than every president ever combined in the first year in being in office through grifting and through all kinds of illegal actions. Not only do we know, like, there's so many illegal things that this president has done that warrant impeachment, but the only reason that has not happened is because the Republicans control both houses of Congress. This is not so much a political decision, but more a matter of America living up to its better angels. Like, who are we? We talk about our country as the good guys. We talk about our country as having higher ideas. We talk about our country as well intentioned. But when we have a president that is doing what Donald Trump has done to date, if we don't impeach him, we've completely abandoned those higher ideals for our country. And so I think we must. And you could add some fervor and frustration and some anger behind that if you'd like, but I think it is our duty to impeach the president.
Gerrymandering, redistricting, whatever you want to call it, it's different words, but the same thing.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about what's been going on nationally where this various states are doing all this stuff? And right now in Maryland, it's gotten a lot of political attention. Do you
Yeah.
feel the state should redistrict? Do you think that maybe there should be some sort of legislation that says, wait, how about every 10 years, not whenever you're just mad at whatever's in power at the moment?
Yeah, it's. I think we had this conversation in our first interview, John, and I was fully supportive and still am fully supportive of changing the maps, even though, before it would not have helped me because my map right now is very favorable. It's essentially Baltimore City. Baltimore City knows me. I've been doing work here for a very long time, and then parts of the county. A new map and the proposed map would have been primarily county, and I have no exposure out there. So it would have been very difficult for me in that new map, but I still supported it because of what is on the line. And unfortunately, we're seeing this across the South. We're seeing mostly black seats, black representatives, seats that have black representatives be chopped up and watered down such that Republicans can take over the seats. Tennessee is an excellent example of that, but we're seeing that across the South. We're seeing Democratic seats be carved up in order to water down those votes to ensure that every seat is a Republican seat. So I think I think gerrymandering sucks, but what sucks more is not having a true democracy. And I think it's important for us to change these maps to make sure that we can have proportional representation in Congress, to make sure that we don't continue to see our country slide toward authoritarianism. And I think thereafter, we need a solution at the national level or efforts at the state level to ensure at multiple state levels to ensure that this is a fair game going forward and that this never happens again. But I think this started with the Republican Party and some of the decisions they were making in Texas, and here we are today, and it's only gotten worse.
My last question is this. For people listening, people thinking of that, they've got people have their mail-in ballots at home right now. I filled mine out last night. My wife filled hers out too. For the people sitting down and looking at that ballot right now in District 7, and they see your name and your opponent's name, why should they color that thing in for you and vote for you over Kwasi and Fume?
I think there are a bunch of reasons why they should vote for me over Kwesi. I think one of the key things that I did when I kicked off my campaign is I decided I was not going to take any corporate PAC money or any APAC money. And I think that's really, really important, as I said earlier, if only because I am ensuring that I only work for the people. And this is not a promise for this election. This is a promise going forward. As long as I serve in elected office, I think we have a problem right now in politics generally, but also within the Democratic Party that the influence of money in politics has resulted in a disconnect between the priorities of the people and the priorities of the Democratic donor base. And this is how we end up in situations where politicians say they want to address certain issues, but those issues never get addressed because it's not in the best interest of their donors. I think once again, when you look at the difference between myself and the congressman, you're going to find a couple things. One, you're going to find that he's taken APAC money, which I think is a perfect example of foreign policy being distorted by the influence of money in politics. We should not be sending money to Israel to expand the wars that are happening in the Middle East. We should not be, and this is another vote that he's taken, we should not be getting further involved in the war in Lebanon between Lebanon and Israel. It does not serve the American people. It does not even serve American foreign policy. But the influence of APAC suggests that that's what they want. And so, if there's one big reason and there's many big reasons why I think I should be the one you support, but I'm here if only to make sure that the will of the people is carried out and that money does not have an undue influence over my decisions. And ultimately, I want to make sure that it has no influence on decisions of our Congress members.
Thanks again for your time and good luck on the campaign trail. You got about 2 weeks to go.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.